Self-mastery is a process that involves patience and a willingness to override old behavior and reset those internal rhythms in order to grow and learn. But the results of your efforts come back to you tenfold. Once you start seeing the positive effects it can have on the outcomes you will begin to create in your life. Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. I have an interesting topic that I wanted to talk about today because questions around it seem to show up, especially when we contemplate initiating change. And the topic is self-mastery. Now, before we dive in, let's talk about just what exactly is self-mastery. So self-mastery is the ability to control your own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in a way that aligns with your highest goals, values, and purpose. Now, I know this sounds a bit lofty, but we're going to dive into it and what this really means in more detail in a bit. But it's basically about developing a deeper level of self-awareness and self-discipline that allows you to make intentional choices rather than reacting automatically or impulsively to whatever life throws your way. It's also a path to taking fuller responsibility for the outcomes in your life. This can be a long road for some, but to all of us, it's the ultimate goal. Self-mastery is super important when we're creating something new in our lives because in order to be successful, we need to dig a little deeper internally and ask ourselves some of those important and often uncomfortable questions to make sure we're ready to take action without falling into self-sabotage along the way. The control we feel over emotional responses helps us stay grounded, especially when our circumstances are a bit chaotic, something that can often happen when experiencing change. And as I've experienced more and more of self-mastery in my life, I can say I feel it has grown stronger by doing more thought work, which means challenging negative thinking or those thoughts that get in the way of moving forward. And I've become more in control of what life throws my way by doing that. Since our thoughts control our emotions, being able to manage them more effectively helps a ton. So I think of self-mastery as a slower, more purposeful way of living life. We take the time needed to pause and absorb any given situation before reacting in the moment. And that time spent can make all the difference in the world. So now that we know self-mastery is what actually gets us to that next level of awareness and grounding, let's talk a bit about the 5 key aspects that determine self-mastery. The first is self-awareness and understanding yourself more deeply. Self-mastery really begins with this. It's an honest and deep understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, beliefs, values, and motivations. This really requires courage and a willingness to go deeper to answer those questions about yourself, which we all know takes time and patience. But by recognizing patterns in how you think, feel, and behave, you can identify areas for growth and work toward greater self-awareness. This is in essence a result of slowing down and just getting curious about what's going on inside you. Emotional awareness is also key and includes recognizing and understanding your emotions and triggers. Self-mastery requires the ability to manage your emotional responses rather than allowing them to control your actions. So when triggers start to happen, that's when we know that things start to feel very out of control. Now, this may mean having strategies to override those responses that we've grown accustomed to having when something disturbing or difficult happens, but it's well worth the effort. And it takes discipline and also a level of maturity to really take action to break these patterns. Now, the second one is what we were just talking about, self-discipline and consistent action towards your goals. So self-discipline involves making decisions that align with your long-term goals, even when it's challenging or uncomfortable. It's the ability to delay immediate gratification and resist those impulses that don't serve your best interests. Now, the next is managing emotions effectively, or in other words, emotional regulation. Self-mastery involves being able to recognize, accept, and control your emotional states without suppressing them. Now, this doesn't mean avoiding emotions, but rather acknowledging and handling them more constructively. For those of us who grew up with a challenged ability to recognize emotion, like myself, we can take smaller steps with this, but ultimately it's about sitting with an emotion and letting it ride itself out. A big part of emotional regulation is about staying composed in challenging situations, which allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. The next is about living with intention. This is all about knowing what you want in life and aligning your actions with your values and purpose. When you are clear on your why, it becomes easier to stay focused and intentional in your choices. People with self-mastery are also able to set clearer goals and just take consistent action toward them. They adapt as needed without really losing sight of the larger purpose. And then finally, adaptability and openness to change. So self-mastery is a lifelong process of learning and growth, and it requires an openness to new perspectives, also to feedback and the willingness to adjust beliefs and behaviors that may be holding you back. So true self-mastery means continuously seeking to improve yourself, learning from both successes and failures, and evolving through life's challenges. So the real benefits of self-mastery are your ability to handle stress and remain calm under pressure, with the inner peace and resilience that comes from knowing that you can rely on yourself to stay grounded and focused. It also leads to greater success in your personal and professional life because it just empowers you to speak your truth and step into the person you want to be at work and at play. In essence, self-mastery is all about being in control of your inner world, which means your thoughts, emotions, and your actions. It allows you to act from a place of intention and wisdom, making choices that contribute to your higher goals and growth that will ultimately lead you to a more purposeful and fulfilling life. So with all of this said, how do we gain self-mastery during challenging times? Now, first, I'll say it definitely requires deliberate practice to help you navigate adversity while staying grounded. We all know that. This is not something that happens overnight. But a few easy ways to approach this are, number one, reframe your challenges. When you view a challenge as an opportunity to grow rather than a setback, you're moving closer towards self-mastery. And you can ask yourself questions like, what can I learn from this? Or how could this make me stronger? It's really all about asking those deeper questions. And also, what rituals can you lean on to help ground you and guide you through this period? So writing about your experiences can also help you make sense of them and recognize your resilience. Next, you can strengthen your emotional awareness. By that, I mean label what you're feeling as emotions come up to gain control over them and pause before reacting. You can use techniques like deep breathing or counting to 10 before responding to stress. Those are super helpful ones. The next is focus on what you can control. So identify the controllables. Make a list of what you can influence and commit to action in those areas. Then let the rest go. Practicing acceptance for the things that are beyond your control is huge. And although this can be challenging at times, it is so well worth it in the end. Next is practice grounding exercises. So engage in activities like deep breathing or meditation. Even for those of you who hate to meditate, a few minutes a day can do wonders to calm your central nervous system and keep you grounded. And then lastly, be sure to track your progress. So set small milestones to make things less overwhelming. Break challenges into phases and celebrate each accomplishment, no matter how minor. And be sure to reflect by asking yourself what strategies are helping and what needs adjustment. By focusing on these specific actions, you not only manage immediate stress, but also build lasting self-mastery that equips you for future challenges. With all this said, if you want to go deeper into the concept of self-mastery, and believe me, you can go much, much deeper than this, and how it's outlined in the study of yoga, I'm going to leave a great book recommendation called The 8 Limbs of Yoga by Patanjali, and it's within the Yoga Sutras. It's a fascinating read and provides a much more comprehensive framework from a much deeper perspective. Finding a way to become more mindful and deliberate when it comes to creating the outcomes in your life is not only important, but it's critical for your own development. And it allows you to experience life with greater clarity and intention. Self-mastery is a process that involves patience and a willingness to override old behavior and reset those internal rhythms in order to grow and learn. But the results of your efforts come back to you tenfold. Once you start seeing the positive effects it can have on the outcomes you will begin to create in your life. That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.